Good morning to one and all present. I, Rashmi Dubey, welcome you all on this auspicious occasion of National Science Day. First, I pay my homage to late Sri Govindaravji Vanzari sir, founder president of Amar Seva Mandal. I also pay my heartfelt gratitude to Honorable Dr. Suhasini Vanzari ma'am, President Amar Seva Mandal, for her guidance and support. Honorable Advocate Abhijit Vanzari sir, MLC and Secretary Amar Seva Mandal. Honorable Dr. Smita Vanzari ma'am, Treasurer Amar Seva Mandal, for their constant guidance and support. National Science Day is celebrated in India on 28th February every year. The day is celebrated to commemorate the discovery of Raman effect by the great Indian physicist Sir C.V. Raman on 28th February 1928. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930 for the same. This year, the theme of the National Science Day is Women in Science. So, for today's program, I welcome our today's guest, Dr. R.M. Zugade Sir, Professor, Department of Chemistry, Rashtrasan Tukloji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur, Dr. D.S. Badwai Sir, Principal, Kamla Nehru Mahavidyalaya, Nagpur, Dr. Pradeep Dhaikar Sir, Vice Principal, Kamla Nehru Mahavidyalaya, Nagpur. I also heartily welcome all the HODs and faculty members from all the departments and also all the student participants for today's program. Welcome all of you. Now, for inaugurating today's event, I invite Dr. D.S. Badwai, Principal, Kamla Nehru Mahavidyalaya, for inaugurating this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rashmi ma'am. Good morning, one and all. First, I pay homage to late Sri Govindaravji Vanzari, founder president Amar Seva Mandal, who had planted a sapling 38 years before that became a banyan tree. Chief guest and speaker of this National Science Day celebration program, Professor Dr. Jugade sir, Department of Chemistry, RTM, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Vice Principal of our college, Dr. Pradeep Dhaikar sir, Science Faculty in charge, Dr. W.V. Gurnule sir, all heads of Science faculty members, and all young and dynamic scientists who are present in this virtual program. On behalf of Kamla Nehru Mahavidyalaya, I extend a warm and heartiest welcome to all of you on this occasion. National Science Day is celebrated every year on 20th of February to mark the great invention by Indian physicist Chandrasekhara Venkata Raman. He discovered Raman effect on the same day, that is 28th of February in year 1928. And for his great achievement and success, he was awarded Nobel Prize in Physics in year 1930. What is the Raman effect? What is discovered? He discovered that when a beam of light transfers to a dust-free transparent sample of chemical compound, then the transmitted light or light undergoes scattering. The scattered light consists of the wavelength which is present in the original one, as well as scattered light also consists of the wavelength different than that of the incident beam. Thus, this change in wavelength first observed by Raman, that is why it is called as the Raman effect. Impact of Raman effect can be experienced in every field of science. It has played a significant role in the field of spectroscopy, medical diagnostic, and material characterization. After C.V. Raman, some Indian scientists working abroad got Nobel Prize in different subjects, but no Indian scientist working in India got Nobel Prize till now. A country like India, having population around 135 crore, that too includes 65% of population is young, that is having an age less than 35 years. Even then, none of the Indian scientists After C.V. Raman, working in India, got the Nobel Prize. Where the difficulty lies? What is the problem? Why the Indian scientists are not receiving the Nobel Prize? Dear students, you are the future of India. Former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, saw a dream that India should become a superpower, developed country by year 2020. Year 2020 already passed. Is India became a superpower or developed country? Not at all. Still, India is developing country. The main objective of celebrating this National Science Day is to bring awareness to the students about the importance of scientific application in their daily life and to encourage them by popularizing the science and technology. It allows the scientists and experts from the field to discuss issues and new technologies trending in the field. Also, the celebration is aimed at giving an opportunity for this new generation to display their activities, efforts, and achievement in the field of science or the human welfare. Dear students, you should develop the scientific temperament. We should being the teacher, we should inculcate the scientific motivation among the students. Students must be curious about the things happening around you. Ask the question to yourself, why, how this happens. Find out the scientific answer to the observation. See the problem facing by the society and find out the scientific solution to that problem. Student, you must think out of box. You should see the dream of innovation and creative ideas and try to implement it. Yesterday, you might have read in the Times of India newspaper that news appeared from the Yavatmal district. In 2017, many farmers died because of they are spraying the insecticide on their cotton plants. And that insecticides are hazardous to the health. 10 farmers died out and many, around 100 farmers suffered because of the severe illness and they are admitted to the student. This is the problem facing by the society. One student from the 2017, a student of 8th standard, Aniket Kakade, he saw this problem and he decided to work something from the farmer. He make a robot and that robot can spray the insecticide on the cotton plant without human help. See the students, how the small student of 8th standard develop the robot because he see the problem facing by the farmers in that area. Similarly, during this pandemic situation, 2020, same student Aniket Kakade developed a machine. That machine ensure that without contact, a sanitization of the public places can be done. Because of this achievement and creativity of Aniket Kakade, he received Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Ignite Medal, and he is the only student from Vidarbha who received this medal. So, if the student from 8th standard, now he might be in the 10th, generate the innovative ideas among himself, then why not you? Dear student, it is the time. India will become a developed country only when every young student must contribute to that. On the occasion of the National Science Day, we organize the n number of competitions. The person behind organization of these competitions are none other than respected Dr. Suhasini Vanjari Madam, President Amar Seva Mandal, Honorable MLC Advocate Abhijit Vanjari Sir, Secretary Amar Seva Mandal, Honorable Dr. Smita Tai Vanjari Madam, Treasurer Amar Seva Mandal. They are the source of inspiration for us. We always organize various activities for the students to provide them platform to show their hidden talents. There are many opportunities for the scientists. In the organization like TFIR, ISRO, Indian Institute of Science, CSIR laboratories like NPL, NCL, NERI, since they are facing problem of shortage of scientists. If you are having the in-depth knowledge of the subject, you can crack the entry level examination of these organizations. I congratulate and thanks the organizing committee for organizing such event to inspire the student to inculcate scientific temperament from them. Thank you very much, sir. Over to Rashmi ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this informative speech. As we know, science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity and is the torch which illuminates the world. And really, Swadeshi Pujyate Raja Vidwan Sarvatra Pujyate. Now, before moving towards our speech of our guest, I got an opportunity to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. R.M. Zugade. Sir is currently working as professor in analytical chemistry, Department of Chemistry, Rashtra Tukaroji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Sir has completed PhD from Nagpur University in the year 2004. Sir has qualified NET and SET examination in the year 1998. And area of his research interest is modified biopolymer for effluent treatment, electroanalytical chemistry, environmental and pharmaceutical analysis. Sir has total 42 research publications, 20 paper presentation. He had 12 test books which are published, and 4 students got PhD award. And 4 students are working. Presently, 4 students are working under him. So, before making any delay, I invite Dr. R.M. Zugade, sir, for a speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for the nice words of introduction. Yes, please, madam, make me enable for this screen sharing.
No, sir, still not.
No, actually, it is giving a message, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
You will have to make me enable for that. Yes. Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is it full screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the very beginning, I wish to make an important announcement on this day of National Science Day program, that the Science Study Circle of Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya, under which all these science related activities are generally organized. So it has been told to me, or the responsibility has been given to me to announce the inauguration of this Science Study Circle. So in the very beginning, I declare that the Science Study Circle of Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya has been inaugurated at this particular day of National Science Day program. Okay, so I think I should start with the responsibility which is given to me by the organizers, that I have to talk about water treatment on the day of national, or in the program of National Science Day. I think I have been allotted 45 minutes and I will be taking or making use of all the 45 minutes. So from 11:15 to 12 o'clock. Is it okay, Gurumare sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you very much once again, the organizers. And let us start with our business of water treatment. See, since it's a combined or mixed crowd of all the subjects in the Faculty of Science, That's why I thought about talking about not a specific or specified chemistry subject, but a generalized subject of environmental chemistry or environmental science. It is a water treatment. Uh, it is a glimpse of how actually the wastewater is treated, and at the end we come up with a good quality water. So ultimately what my aim today is to convert this crying water droplet into this smiling water droplet by carrying out this treatment, making the use of my knowledge in the field of chemistry. So let us start with our discussion about this. Okay, so this is the aim. Aim is to convert this into this so that I should be able to drink the water which is provided to me. So outline of the lecture is introduction to water pollution. It will start with this: types of water pollutants, then wastewater treatment, the primary treatment, secondary treatment, and a tertiary treatment, their necessities, the methods, and the sludge treatment. So this is the brief outline of the lecture, what you will be or we will be discussing in these 45 minutes. You can see this beautiful picture of Mother Earth. Okay, this is a picture taken from somewhere in the space. Now, if we see this picture carefully, we'll find that there is a lot of blue color on this, then a small part of green color, and a very small part of this brownish colored portion. If we see this carefully, what is this blue color is nothing but water. The green color is the vegetation or the plants, and this brownish gray color is actually the land. So you will find that most of this is covered with water. So it means that it has been taught to us from our childhood that about 70% on the water or on the earth surface, or the 71% of the earth surface is covered with water. And even after this, we are having 332 million cubic miles of water on earth, and still we are facing the water crisis or water scarcity. Now, what is the reason for this? The reason lies in two aspects. The very first aspect is this: you will find the earth's water is mostly present in the form of oceans, and this water is saline water, or what we call as a salty water. And so this is not a drinkable type of water. So what is the fresh water is only 3% of the total. So 3% of total, but still the volume of water, if we consider, so it's a huge amount of water present in the form of fresh water. But this fresh water, out of this 3%, about 68% of this 3% is present in the form of ice caps and glaciers. So means remaining only whatever portion of this is remaining. So 68% of 3%. So what is remaining is only 1% of the total water is present in the form of groundwater and surface water and other water. Now this water is present in the form of lakes, the surface water, rivers and swamps. Swamps means जिसे हम दलदल कहते हैं. This दलदल के form है. So this is not a drinkable. So what can be drink or what can be used for drinking purpose is lakes and the river water. So this is the scenario of the surface water. And even after this, we are having a sufficient quantity of water because the nature has got its own mechanism of giving us purified water. What is the mechanism? We have the water bodies on the earth's surface. They undergo evaporation, then condensation in the form of clouds, precipitation of the clouds, and then in the form of rain, it comes back to the earth in the form of purest form of water. So the water which is coming from the rain is the purest form of water available on the earth's surface. Again, it undergoes percolation, transpiration, evaporation, condensation. So this cycle goes on. So this is a beautiful cycle provided to us by the nature, and nature is the ultimate truth. But what we have done with this nature, we have done this, we have done this, we have done this, we have done this, and all these activities of human beings have led to this. This last 1 year of this corona or COVID-19 pandemic has taught us a lot. What are the consequences of playing with nature? This is what a situation of a human being today because of all these activities in which we are involved in, or we are playing with the mother nature. Okay, so now what is the role? Role is to go in the reverse order and bring this back to the original situation. How it can be brought? I will try to give you a small glimpse of what we are doing. Let us see. This is a simple calculation taught to me in my 9th or 10th or 11th class. A simple organic or simple inorganic reaction, basically carbon plus oxygen gives me carbon dioxide. It's a simple reaction, and the mole concept teaches me that 12 grams of carbon requires 32 grams of oxygen to get converted into CO2 gas. And my knowledge of chemistry tells me that about the dissolved oxygen content of water is about 8 milligrams per liter. So let us try to understand this, focus on these values. So it means that 1 liter of water, fresh water, contains about 8 milligrams of oxygen. Now, this 32 grams of oxygen, it means that, see, 1 liter of fresh water contains 8 milligrams of oxygen. It means that 32 grams of oxygen will be present in 4,000 liters of water. It means that if I add 12 gram carbon in a water body of 4,000 liters, it will consume all the oxygen which is present in that water body. It means that complete oxygen or complete dissolved oxygen in a water body of 4,000 liters is consumed by only 12 grams of carbon if I introduce it into the water body. Now, what we are doing? We are doing this. So how much carbon we are introducing? This much carbon, this much carbon. So a lot of carbon we are introducing into the water bodies, and see what will happen. How much oxygen will be consumed by this in order to degrade them. And as a result, all these water bodies will get polluted. Okay. So now what we call it is a water pollution. So this can be defined as the undesirable change in physical, chemical and biological properties of the water, and it makes it unfit for our use. So the use can be a domestic use, the use can be in the fields for harvesting, the use can be for drinking purpose. So if it is unsuitable for or unfit for the purpose, then we call it as a polluted water. Okay. So what are the sources of water pollution? We divide the sources of water pollution into two types. First type of sources are called as the point sources. Now, point sources are those sources where the area or the source area is negligible. Now, when the source area is negligible, then a single point is considered for mathematical modeling. For example, if I want to prepare a model of how the pollution will get distributed over a wide range, so this source is considered as a point source. And in point sources, the concentration is confined to a small area. For example, if we consider the discharges from the industry, they come under point sources. Sewage discharge from the domestic usage, they come under point sources. Discharge from the wastewater treatment plant. See, whenever there is a wastewater treatment plant, you have two outlets from there. One is a good fresh water after treatment, and one which is a muddy water. That is again a point source of pollution. And then combined sewer outlets, they come under point sources. All of these come under point sources. The second type of sources are the non-point sources. They are coming from they are dispersed over a wider areas. So as a result, the spread is over a large surface and local concentration is low, but the area covered is high. If we see point sources, the local concentration is high, but the area covered is low. In non-point sources, the local concentration is low, but the area covered is large. For example, if we consider the sediments from the construction site, for example, we know that there are large buildings, constructions is going on. So a lot of cement and dust is coming, and that is leaching into the water bodies. So that comes from, or that acts as a non-point source because it is over a spread larger area. Similarly, fertilizers and pesticides from the fields. So if there is a field of 10 acres and we are spreading fertilizers or pesticides into that, so that is a 10 acres area is a non-point source. Similarly, oil, grease from the parking lots. So if there is a huge parking lot and some oil is spilling from the vehicles, then acid drainage from the abandoned mines. So all of these come under non-point sources because they are covering a larger surface area. Okay. Again, we can classify them, the water pollutants, as domestic wastes. So domestic wastes, they are coming from our houses. So where the sewage line is there, so sewage wastewater. So this water is used for various purposes like cleaning, bathing, washing, etc. So all of these come under domestic wastewater. Then irrigation source. Oh, this is an interesting source. Why this is an interesting source? This is coming from excess of the fertilizers, pesticides, plant debris, okay, and that enter into the lake, rivers, and we pollute them. So what happens is, suppose there is large concentration of fertilizers and these fertilizers enter into the water bodies. Now we know that water generally contains algae. Now this algae grows to a large extent because they are getting, the algae is getting these fertilizers. So what a lot of nutrition is present for the algae. And as a result, the algal growth or algal bloom will take place. And this algae will consume the dissolved oxygen for respiration. And as a result, the situation is called as eutrophication. This is a wonderful phenomena, or actually it is not wonderful. We can say it is actually very dangerous phenomena for the water bodies, because in eutrophication, there is a lot of algae which is developed in the water body because of the excessive availability of the fertilizers. Then industrial effluents. So they are generally the non-biodegradable type of effluents like proteins, carbohydrates, fats, dyes, and various salts. They come from the industries. That is a common area of source. And then radioactive waste, like the mining and processing of ores containing radioactive elements. For example, if there is a mine for uranium or thorium, then these mines will lead to leading of this nuclear waste or nuclear power, even the waste from the nuclear power plants. So all of these are radioactive, and we know that radioactivity leads to cancer as well as mutations and the hereditary problems in the persons or their generations. So all of this is another way of classifying. So we can classify the water pollutants or water pollution, the pollutants as the point source or the non-point source. Also, on the basis of this, we can classify them as domestic, irrigation, industrial, and radioactive wastes. Okay, so now our aim is to go for water quality management. So water can contain some physical ingredients like clay, slate, humus, etc. Some chemical contaminants like calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, sulfate, fluoride, etc. Metallic constituents like iron, manganese, copper, chromium, etc. Organic contaminants like total organic, TOC, nutrients, okay. Then some oils and greases will also be there. Some bacteria and coliforms and they will be there. Then biological ingredients like zooplankton and phytoplankton will be there, and radioactive. So all of these, considering all of these, we can also classify the pollutants into various types like organic pollutants. Now, these organic pollutants can be considered or can be further divided into biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Biodegradable are land runoffs, animals and human discharges, domestic waste, food processing plants, sugar mills. They are the sources of this biodegradable type of waste. And these biodegradable, they undergo degradation and they consume the dissolved oxygen. As a result, the aquatic life is badly hampered. Coming to the non-biodegradable like pesticides, detergents, food additives, synthetic fibers, etc., you will find that they lead to various toxic effects because they are non-biodegradable. And if they enter the food chain, for example, some pesticides are consumed by suppose fishes. And if we are the persons who are consuming those fishes, then these pesticides will enter into our bodies. Then similarly, oils, the oil spills from the ships. If there are in the coastal regions, some ships are there and some oil gets spilled from there, then they affect the marine organisms. Okay. Then coming to the inorganic pollutants, they generally include the mineral acids, then salts of heavy metals, then various releases from the chemical industry, electroplating industry, dyes industry, paint industry, etc. The problem of this is various metals like iron, mercury, they have some diseases associated with them. For example, iron, it has got, it is associated with the heart diseases, cancer, diabetes, etc. Mercury, it is related with the muscle control, etc. So all these heavy metals, or you can say inorganic pollutants, they lead to certain disorders in our body. Okay. Then third types of pollutants, they are the sediments. Sediments are coming generally from the soil, sand, minerals, particle wastes, and all of them, they remain suspended in water because they are very fine particles and they make the water turbid. And if the water is turbid, then the pollutants do not allow the light to reach to the bottom of the water body, making this difficult for the survival of the aquatic plants. So aquatic plants, which are normally present at the bottom of the plant water body, so these aquatic plants cannot survive because of the insufficient light reaching to them, because these small sediment particles, they scatter the light before the light reaches the bottom. Then the radioactive pollutants like nuclear power plants, mining of radioactive ores, they have emissions of alpha, beta, gamma radiations, and overexposure to these radioactive waste, they causes severe health problems. And apart from that, mutation and genetic disorder, that is very dangerous thing. Okay. Apart from that, there is one more type of pollutant which is called as the thermal pollutant. For example, if some hot water is discharged into the water bodies from industries, suppose. So what will happen? We know that whenever the temperature increases, the solubility decreases. There is a inverse relation between solubility of gases and the temperature. So when with increase in temperature, if hot water is there, then it decreases the solubility of oxygen, and as a result, dissolved oxygen level decreases. And due to reduction in the dissolved oxygen level, there is a deterioration of the aquatic life once again. Okay, it may also lead to extinction of various species due to thermal shock. You can imagine if the animals are associated with the water, and the water temperature is normally 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and if you are discharging hot water, raising the temperature suddenly by a factor of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, then there will be thermal shock and they will be affected. Biological pollutants, they are disease causing microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, algae, viruses, worms, etc. And they cause the waterborne diseases such as cholera. Okay, so now basically what is a wastewater? So wastewater is the water which is generally used for some domestic or commercial purpose, and it must be treated before it is released into another body of water so that it does not cause further pollution. So what we have done is we have taken the water from some natural source and we want to discharge it back into some other natural source. So we have taken water from, suppose, a tank or a lake or a river, and we have used it, and the used water we want to put it back into the water body like river or lake or even sea. Okay, so what is the role of this? So what we are doing is usable water we have used, and after using we have produced the wastewater. So before putting it into the water body, we should treat it, and we should dispose it in the form of a reusable type of water. So basically, water treatment agencies are responsible for proper treatment of wastewater. Like we know that there is a Central Pollution Control Board or Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. So they are the agencies which are responsible or which are taking care of this, that whatever water is used water, before discharging it into water body, it has to be treated and it should be reusable type of water. Okay, so what are the aims of this wastewater treatment? There are three types of aims. The primary aim is to reduce the pollution load of the water. So what water we are having is, we have taken it from some body, it was a clean water, we have used it, and now we have made it a wastewater, which is unclean water. So before putting it back into the body, the pollution load should be reduced. Okay. The secondary aim is make the water dischargeable into water bodies to meet the norms. Now, who is going to form these norms? These norms are generally provided by the Pollution Control Board. For example, industry has taken up the water from some river and now it is going to put the wastewater back into the river. So before putting it back into the river, the Central Pollution Control Board has provided some norms. So those norms have to be met, and for that the water is to be treated. And thirdly, make water useful for a specific purpose. For example, after treatment, if I want to use it for some other purpose, like for some boilers, for example, industry has taken up water from river, it has treated it, and now it can use the same water for their own water boilers. So this is how you can use it or reuse it. So ultimately, the aim of wastewater treatment is convert unusable water into usable water. Okay, now coming to the actual wastewater treatment methodology, how this wastewater is treated. So we have taken water from some water body, we have used it, we have contaminated it with a lot of pollutants, and now before discharging it into water body, we have to carry out 4-level treatment. The 4-level treatment is preliminary treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. This is 4-level treatment that is to be carried out before discharging it into water body. Okay, we will see, or we will discuss all the 4 treatment levels one by one. The first level is the preliminary treatment. Now, what is the aim of preliminary treatment? This is generally carried out by using the bar screens. So here, the sewage water or the wastewater is passed through bar screens to separate water from large coarse organic and inorganic solids. For example, suppose the wastewater contains some leaves, some rocks, or some you can say some plant residues, etc. Okay, so these bar screens are used, and they mechanically separate these vertical bars which are spaced between 1 to 3 inches apart, and water is made to pass through the bars. Okay, now we will see, I will show you how the bars work. So this is the sewage water or the wastewater which is coming. It contains some solid particles like some leaves are there, or some wood residues are there. Okay, so all these solid particles are made to pass through the bar screens, and there is a drive which continuously cleans up the bars, and these bars are about 2 to 3 inches apart from each other. So larger particles get trapped into these bars, and these bars are continuously cleaned, and whatever water is coming out of this in the outflow will not contain such large particles. So aim of this preliminary treatment is to remove the larger particles. Okay, I will show you how these bar screens work. So it works something like this. So this is water inflow. These are the bar screens. The bars are continuously removing the larger particles, and larger particles are collected in the top part, and water outflow goes from the bottom part. So this is how it looks or how it works. You can see the comb action. This is how the bar screens work. There are, you can see there are the small or equally spaced bars, and continuously the combs are moving. If you see this carefully, the combs are continuously removing the larger particles which are trapped in the bars. So this is how the bar screen works, and the water which is coming out of this bar screen on the right side, that will not contain such larger particles, but they will contain only smaller particles. This is called as the preliminary treatment. Okay, after preliminary treatment, what we carry out is a primary treatment. Now, what is the aim of primary treatment? Is to remove the suspended particles. Now, suspended particles are small particles. They cannot be trapped by the bars. So they are small in size. So we have to remove them. And these are removed in primary treatment by physical separation without any chemical treatment. So how it can be done? It is generally pumped or forced by gravity after the bar screens. So once the water has passed through the bar screens, the larger particles are removed. So smaller particles, for that, it is forced by gravity. And after primary treatment, the effluents are carried to secondary treatment. So aim is to remove the suspended particles. Now in primary treatment, 40 to 60% reduction in the solid particles and 30 to 40% reduction in the oxygen demand because larger particles are removed. Okay, now let us see. So this primary treatment is generally carried out for suspended particles removal, and it can be done by using two chambers. One is called as the grit chamber and second is the sedimentation tank. Now these are the bar screens. So bar screens have removed the larger particles. So smaller particles are forced by force or by a lot of velocity into a grit chamber. And we know that these particles will definitely, because of the gravity, they will settle down in the grit chamber. Some of the particles will flow here. Smaller particles will settle down in the sedimentation tank. Those sedimentation tanks are very large volume tanks. And here there is a large velocity. There is a basic difference between the grit chamber and a sedimentation tank. In grit chamber, the water flowing has high velocity, but in sedimentation tank, it is having low velocity. We'll see how the sedimentation or the grit chambers and sedimentation plant they look like. Okay, so grit means small particulate matter and they settle down under gravitational force. If you see this diagram carefully, this is water inlet. Water will enter into this. The grit particles will be there. In some cases, the compressed air is passed. Sometimes this is not there. The small particles will slowly settle down. Whereas if the inlet water contains some fat, oil or grease, that will remain on the on the top portion because fats and oils, they are having low density. So they will remain in the floating condition. Whereas the grit particles will settle down. So the grit is removed from the bottom and the water which is coming, it is taken not from the top, but from in between. So larger or the particles have gone down. The fats and oils are on the top portion, whereas the water is collected from here somewhere so that the fats and oils and greases should not enter into this. So it goes to outlet. This is the role of a grit chamber. Now, what is a sedimentation tank? That is the second part of the primary treatment. So this sedimentation tank is large in size and almost zero velocity of water. So water is stagnant over there and particles settle down under the influence of gravity very slowly. The scum moves up. Scum means actually the grease or oily part. So it is continuously removed from the top. Then the sludge settles down and it is taken away from the bottom. And this sludge, which is at the bottom, this sludge is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus nutrients, and it can be used for the preparation or in the form of you can say fertilizer for the fields. Okay, so these are various designs of the tanks or sedimentation tank. So various designs are available. Okay, rectangular tank, circular tank, and hopper bottom tank with vertical flow. Okay, now this is about primary treatment. So in preliminary treatment, we have removed the larger particles. In the primary treatment, we have removed the smaller particles or suspended particles. Now we come to the secondary treatment. The secondary treatment is actually the treatment of organic waste material. So what is the organic waste material? It normally contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur. These are the components. So what we do, convert elemental toxicant into non-toxic compounds. So they are present in the elemental form. So this is to be converted into non-toxic compounds, and generally the process is brought about by the aerobic bacteria. So it is a biochemical process, not the chemical process, but biochemical process, secondary treatment. And the effluent water is 90% free from toxicants and can be discharged into water body. After secondary treatment, the water is actually in a position, we are in a position to discharge it into outer water body or external water body. So what is actually happening? The aerobic bacteria cause the aerobic oxidation of these carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur and convert them into gases. So CO2, H2O, NH3, SO2, it goes into atmosphere, and what we get is 90% removal of the toxicants, and it is done by the aerobic bacteria. Interesting. Okay, now how it is carried out? It is carried out by two processes. The first process is called as trickling filters. Now this trickling filters is one of the water treatment system consisting of fixed bed rock, coke, gravel, slag, polyurethane foam, ceramics or plastic media over which this sludge is there, and it is having a layer of microbial slime, or what is called as a biofilm. So these microorganisms are grown over these particles or rocks, and these rocks are placed in this bed, and the water which is coming over here, if you see this feed pipe, the water is entering into this, and then it is sprinkled into this bed, and the water passes through this bed in the downward direction. Now, since there is a biofilm over there, these bacteria act upon these microorganisms. The microorganisms act upon the various elements like carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc., and convert them into gases. And because of this, what will happen? This the water which is coming from the bottom will not contain such elements like nitrogen, carbon, etc. Second way of carrying out the secondary treatment is activated sludge treatment. This activated sludge is accumulated bacteria-rich deposit. So it contains a lot of bacteria, this sludge. And this activated sludge is seeded into incoming wastewater. So this is incoming wastewater, and it is seeded. To that, some sludge is added. This sludge contains bacteria, and there is a degradation by microorganisms, and then the water is coming to the settling tank. So the sludge again settles down, and this small portion of the sludge is again recycled and put into the effluent. Okay, so the effluent which is coming out of this will be free from these elemental organic dissolved substances. Okay, so there is one more way of doing it without doing anything. If we put the water after primary treatment into these stabilization ponds or oxidation ponds like this, the nature has got its own recovery system. So what will happen? There is a wind aeration. The wind will come over here. The wind, the oxygen will be provided. Then the sunlight will be there, and it contains, the water contains a lot of bacteria and organics and inorganics. The bacteria will act upon these organic compounds and convert them into the gases. So if we do not do anything, we can just keep them in the stabilization pond, and after a few days, you can discharge it into the water body if it is present nearby water body. So it's very easy without doing anything after the primary treatment. No need of secondary treatment if you allow sufficient stabilization time in the stabilization pond. Nature will itself clean the water. So this is actually a schematic diagram of primary treatment. So what we have done is, we have taken the water which is a wastewater, screen bars, then through this we have put it into the grid chambers, then the primary clarifiers, then aeration tank, secondary clarifiers, and from here we are going to the tertiary treatment after secondary effluent. So we are going to the tertiary treatment which is over here. Okay, now we are coming to the tertiary treatment. So what is the tertiary treatment? The aim of this, to remove the fine suspended solids which have not been removed in the secondary treatment. Then fine suspended solids are generally, for this, sand filters or micro stainers are removed. The second aim is to kill the pathogens by carrying out sterilization. And third aim is to remove dissolved inorganic matter. So suspended particulate we have removed in the secondary treatment, but the dissolved compounds have not been removed, that we are going to see here. So the tertiary treatment can be carried out in 5 different ways. The first technique is evaporation. Let us try to understand this evaporation. Now it's simple. If we evaporate water and condense it, the condensed water is a pure water. So it is the best way of carrying out purification. But the problem of evaporation is, for evaporation you will need a lot of energy because it is to be heated. And for that, it is not possible. If the industrial effluent, you cannot heat the industrial effluent coming out in thousands of liters continuously. So it is impossible to carry out evaporation at industrial level. So impossible for this. But this is undertaken only when there are radioactive wastes, because you cannot allow even a small trace of radioactive waste to go into wastewater. As a result, evaporation is the best way of treating the radioactive waste. Second way of removal of the pollutants is the adsorption. This is one of the best way. The effluent is sent through a series of activated charcoal bed, and it is used to remove dyes, pesticides, organic material, and toxic inorganic matter. So all of these are removed by activated charcoal. This activated charcoal is a high surface area charcoal. So it is having a very high surface area or specific surface area. Then third way is chemical precipitation. Some of the metals like copper, chromium, cadmium, mercury, lead, beryllium, etc. If we add to them some precipitating agent, so by chemical precipitation, they will settle down in the form of their hydroxides or sulfides or nitrate or phosphates like that. And then they get precipitated, settle down, and then you can take out the decantant water, okay, which is free from all these heavy elements, heavy metals. One more way is the reverse osmosis. We will see this. The dissolved solid is present in the wastewater is passed through a semi-permeable membrane to give you reverse osmosis and the ion exchange phenomena. All of these we are going to discuss in brief. Yes, one by one. So evaporation. So this liquid effluent is taken in a collection tank and it is heated to a very high temperature, and then the evaporation followed by condensation. So first heat it and then cool it. So after cooling, what we get is distillate, and this distillate is now free from the toxicants. Second is the adsorption. What I talked about is this is actually the activated charcoal. Now this is a powder particle, and you will see that there are large cavities inside. And because of these cavities or pores, there is a lot of space, and as a result, there is a large surface area. And we know that the surface area is definitely governing the rate of adsorption. You must have studied the word adsorption. This adsorption is directly proportional to surface area. And since the surface area of activated charcoal is very high, the adsorption is very high. So suppose some dyes are there in the effluents or the wastewater, these dyes will be trapped or adsorbed on this. And if we wash it by force in the opposite side, again these dyes can be removed. So this can be reused once again. So adsorbent can be reused or recycled. Third way is chemical precipitation. As I told you, some coagulant is added. For example, we know that the common coagulant which is added is the Fitkari jisko bolte hain. So when you add it, some coagulation will take place and the impurities will settle down at the bottom. Fourth way is the reverse osmosis. What is basically osmosis is a phenomena where the water or any liquid moves from osmosis phenomena is a phenomena where the liquid moves from the lower concentration region to higher concentration region. But reverse osmosis is a phenomena where the liquid moves from higher concentration region to lower concentration region. Consider this is wastewater and it contains a lot of dissolved impurities. So what we have is a semi-permeable membrane. And what we do in reverse osmosis, we pressurize this water and make it to pass through the semi-permeable membrane. Now semi-permeable membrane will not allow these particles to pass through, but allow only pure water. This is what actually happens when you apply pressure to this wastewater. Okay, so this is called as the reverse osmosis phenomena. Normal osmosis, water would have moved from this to this direction, but because of this pressure, you are making it to move from this to this direction. Okay, this is a phenomena which is taking place, reverse osmosis. Okay, and most of we are using this at our home, the RO for water treatment, for getting a drinking water or drinkable water. Then one more technique is the ion exchange phenomena. So we have two ion exchange resin, the cation resin and anion resin. So the wastewater is passed through the cation resin. Cation resin normally contains H+ ions. So whatever cations are present in the wastewater, they exchange with the H+ ions. So whatever water coming over here will be rich in only H+ ions and all the negative ions. In the anion exchange resin, all the negative ions are removed by OH- ions. And then this H+ and OH- they combine, and what you get is a water, pure water. In between, there is a formation of CO2 gas, because as soon as you make the water acidic, whatever are the carbonates, they decompose and they give you carbon dioxide. As a result, this carbon dioxide can interfere here in the anion resin. So this is to be removed before putting it into the anion resin. Okay, last is the sludge treatment. So if you have sludge, then the sludge is first thickened for removing or by removing water, then digestion for pathogen inactivation, then conditioning, then dewatering, incineration, then it is burnt, and finally the sludge is disposed. Okay, this is actually the water or the wastewater treatment plant, one of the beautiful plant in our own Nagpur. You must have heard about this Bhandewadi. This is a wastewater treatment plant, and this is 130 MLD sewage water reuse project for water supply to 3 into 660 megawatt Koradi thermal power station. Now, the water which is coming to this is the waste water or domestic waste water, the sewer water. हमारे घर से जो भी पानी निकल के जा रहा है वो सारा यहाँ भांडेवाड़ी में जा रहा है. And this Bhandewadi water treatment plant is treating it and supplying it to Koradi thermal power station. And Koradi thermal power station is continuously using that water. So you can imagine whenever you are putting water in the for bathing or for flushing, all the water is definitely going into this Bhandewadi wastewater treatment plant, and ultimately that is getting reused in the Koradi thermal power station. Okay, I will suggest all of you definitely go and see this. It's a beautiful project by the Nagpur Municipal Corporation. I think I am finished with my talk of 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Thank you very much. If you have any queries, you are welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such an informative session on water management and water treatment strategies. So if anybody have any question to ask to sir, they may ask.
Yeah. Hello. Rashmi ma'am, I would like to ask one question to the sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely.
Sir, good morning, and such an informative lecture we have. That reminds me all my UG and PG classes of water treatment and wastewater and all the things. It was like a flashback to me. Sir, my question is, we have CPCB, MPCB, which are the two great institutions which regulates the water quality. As well as
Yes.
according to a mandate, every industry needs to set up a water treatment plant, whomsoever is using water.
Right.
Despite that, why the quality of water which is flowing nearby the nala of those industrial area is so polluted? So who is responsible for that? Can you please flash on the light on that, like where the thing goes wrong?
Yeah. Sir, actually 90% of the problems in India can be solved if only one problem is solved, and that is corruption. See, all the norms are there. Norms have to be followed stringently. Industries do not want to put money into the things where they are not getting any profit. Wastewater treatment is a non-profit situation or non-profit type of process for the industries. So industries do not want to waste money over there. And for that, what they are doing is sometimes they are managing certain things. Whenever there are visits or there are collection of sample by the governing organizations, at that time the effluent is different, and whatever are the pollution load they put into the water bodies as per their convenience. So when they find that there is no sampling going to be taking place, then they will put it into the water bodies. So that is a problem. So that's why I said 90% problems can be solved if corruption is not there.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
if there is
any more
any
questions?
Yeah, if there is any question in the chat box.
Thank you, sir. Now, I invite Dr. Shardul Wagh to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. A very good morning to all of you. On the occasion of Science Day celebration, I'm feeling very privileged to propose a formal vote of thanks. As Neil deGrasse Tyson, famous science communicator, said, the good things about science is that it is true whether or not you believe it. At the onset, I pay homage to the great visionary leader, Honorable late Shri Govind Rauji Vanjari sir, founder president of Amar Seva Mandal. At first, I am very much thankful to Honorable Dr. Suhasini Vanjari Madam, President of Amar Seva Mandal, and Honorable MLC Advocate Abhijit Ji Vanjari Sir, Secretary Amar Seva Mandal, though they could not be here due to their busy schedule, but they are always with us as our constant source of inspiration. I sincerely thanks to Honorable Dr. Smita Vanjari Madam, Treasurer of Amar Seva Mandal. Without her guidance and support, it would have been impossible to arrange this event in such a short period. So thank you so much, ma'am. On behalf of entire institute, I would like to thank the Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Praveen Jugade sir, whose Department of Chemistry, RTM Nagpur University, by accepting our invitation and delivering an informative lecture on wastewater treatment. Sir, thank you so much for explaining such an important issue with us. I extend my thanks to respected Dr. Dilip Badwaik sir, Principal Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya, for his introductory remarks and ensuring the flow of all resources required to arrange this event. I'm also thankful to respected Dr. P.B. Dahikar sir, Vice Principal, Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya, for his cooperation and coordination in arranging this event. I'm thankful to Dr. W.V. Gundule sir, in charge Science Department, Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya, a man behind this today's event. I hereby extend my sincere thanks to all the science faculty members of Kamala Nehru Mahavidyalaya for participating in this program. And I'm very much thankful to all the students who have attended this National Science Day program via YouTube. Because of your active participation, this program has become a great success. Thank you all. Now I hand over the session to my colleague, Dr. Rashmi Dubey. Madam, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Now, from the permission of the grants, I declare that this program is over. Thanks to all for attending this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Jugade sir, thank you. Video clip करेगा ना? Hello. For taking good photographs, virtual, kindly start your video. That is the camera. On your camera, we. Hello, sir. All the members, faculty members are requested to on their camera so that we can take a good photograph. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,